to Let's Talk About It GV. Today we are honored to have guest Ruth Paradise here with us. Ruth, would you mind telling the people a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am on the City of Golden Valley DEIC Commission, and that is Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. I am the chair of the Golden Valley Affordable Housing Commission. I am the block chair for the name keeps changing, the Neighborhood Night Out.
National Night Out.
National Night Out.
Yeah.
I do other volunteer work. I'm on the DFL, work as the chair of my DFL precinct. I have a family with 10 grandchildren, 1 great-grandchildren, which I am blessed to have, and so I keep busy.
Yeah, you do. If you work in the City of Golden Valley, you're a community member, you know Ruth Paradise, that's for sure. So we're very honored to have Ruth here with us. Thank you. We're actually here to discuss Women's History Month, and Ruth is here to share some things with us. So the first question we have for you is, can you share a personal experience you have that has impacted your understanding of women's history?
So when I saw the questions, the first thing I thought was one personal experience. I can't think of one. But then now I've thought more, and I would say that if I were going to say to you one personal experience that's affected it, it was being born female. And that had the most effect on my perception of women's history. But I really wanted to talk more about what is my perception of women's history and what does women's history mean.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, when they talk about Women's History Month and everything, they think about what you see in the news, the women that they see in the news, what you learn in history, who are the important women in history. We all learn, or not we all, but it's known that in the Western world especially, or right now, the women are not often credited with what they do, and so there's very few women in the published works of history, of women's history, representing women's history. But for me, that's not women's history. What gets published in the book is not women's history. Women's history for me is really through the ages, the roles women have taken, how they have impacted society, and what different cultures do with women as history progresses. So when I was I'm a generalist, I'll call myself a generalist. So when I was in college, I took a course in world history, I took a course in world religion, and I was a major in anthropology. And so it gives me a picture of the broader possibilities for women, how religion can influence, how your culture, how your surroundings, the environment affects women. And so the role of women is different where you are and throughout history. So, in the United States today, or in the Western world, we've had a certain concept of the role of women. But I want to just mention, 5,000 years ago, in Mesopotamia, they had a goddess named Inanna, and she was the goddess of war, divine law, political power, and love, beauty, sex, and fertility.
Well, that's a lot of hats.
That's a lot of hats, but that's a combination that we would never put on a woman. If we were going to be naming a goddess, we wouldn't be making her war and fertility at the same time. So the Greek goddess Athena, she was the goddess of wisdom, warfare, cold rationality, tactics, strategy, and now we think of, or women have been thought of as sort of airheads, that they don't know how to do strategy, they don't know how to do, but in Greece they had a goddess that did that. So what happened? That our role for women and our concept of what women's capabilities are has changed so much, and that's what we're fighting against in the modern times. So I wanted to give one more story, and this is a story from the Bible, which is, many people call it the Old Testament,
Yep.
but the Bible. So this is the story of Moses. And in that biblical story, Pharaoh said that all the Israelite male children had to be killed as soon as they were born. And the midwife said, no, we're not doing that. And Moses' mother and sister put him in a basket in the reeds in the sea, and Pharaoh's daughter found him and took him in and raised him in the palace. She had to know that Pharaoh had made that injunction. So this is really an example that we have from long ago of civil disobedience, of women saying, we are standing up, this is wrong, we're not doing it. And so I like that example of something that we can look at, and a lot of people know the story, of role of women.
Right.
And so that's something. So another example is the Native American Hopi tribe. So they have a sun god and an earth goddess, and they understand them to be equally powerful and to be working together. And so that's another good role model that we look at. What are the possibilities for women in history, and how history has perceived women to be making those descriptions in the past.
Yeah, that's very profound. In the ancient sense, pulling that context to modern day, and showing the resilience of women. You spoke to the civil disobedience in a few of those different manners, and then you spoke to the many abilities, the many hats, the many representations that women have, and the duality in that experience. That is something that I must admit, as a man, I didn't think that complex about women's experience, and I really appreciate that perspective. So thank you so much for sharing that and providing that, because I think that's the first time we've had those type of historical contexts on this program. So thank you. So I wanted to ask you another question, speaking from my perspective, and I'm sure other genders would also appreciate this question. How can individuals, regardless of gender, be supportive of women's voices and amplify their voices?
Yeah, so I was going to say that one of the things that all cultures have in common, as you'll know very well, is it's the women who bear the children.
Yep.
Right? The women bear the children, they nurse the children. They're often the ones when the kids are very little that are the caretakers. Now, there are some cultures where after the boys reach a certain age, the men start raising them and the women stay with the children. So different cultures have different solutions. But what we have here in the Western world, the United States, is the women are the ones who bear the children, but they have the main responsibilities for raising the children. Even now, even though times are changing, they do most of the housekeeping, they do most of the shopping, they do most of the picking the kids up from the activities, etc. And so within that role, we have to think of what we can do as a society to enable women to fulfill themselves on what we'll call a professional level, but I don't like that, because I view as being a family, raising good children that are contributors to society plays one of the most important roles in history. That if you make a good society, it's how you raise your kids. So for me, the most supportive thing you can do is to provide good child care from an early age, to have after school care, to have scholarships for women who want to have more education. And then of course women, we need housing, especially for single family moms. We need affordable housing for seniors. We need wage parity. We need, protections of harassment, protections from abuse. We need, as a society also, we always think that women are going to support each other as they try to move forward, but I think that's just societal studies have shown that often as women move up in the hierarchy, they become less open to other women who are trying to come up because they view them as competition. And so you really have to maintain a woman's society where we continue to support each other, to mentor each other. We have to raise our kids in a way that girls think that they can do things. What their expectation is not that they're going to be, just low level, but that they can really do what they want. You have to support them, and you have to support all other women. So,
yeah, I mean,
legislation, enforce the legislation that exists. That's
yeah,
whatever.
absolutely. Yeah, enforce the. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. I'm picking up what you're putting down, and also holding the line for the legislation that has recently been changed. If those out there are understanding what I'm saying, there's been work done over the years to empower women, and there is an effort right now to take back that authority from women in their bodies. So that's something that when I think about what I could do is making sure that I'm vocal, using my vote, doing my due diligence to learn about who is in favor of giving women the empowering them to do what they want with their bodies, and empowering them to take leadership positions. And I think especially in Minnesota, we're in a special time where we have so many women in office.
We have opportunities.
Absolutely.
Right now. Yeah.
Opportunities, so we need to capitalize
That's right.
on that opportunity. So we are in a great time, but there's a lot of work to be done in regards to women having the seat, the authority, and the power that men have had over centuries. So we're I'll just leave it at that. We're getting there.
And there we'll go to the Hopi example, where the men and the women, in this they're God, but they had a more concept of equal power, equal working together.
Absolutely.
And that's the key.
Right.
But just going on what you just said, so I just recently attended the ERA, Equal Rights rally at the Rotunda at the state capitol. And they said that Minnesota is going to be really a unique one in the country, that they're focusing on equal rights for everybody. Women are included, but everybody.
Yeah.
All races, all economic, all it's gender, et cetera. And so that's great. But the interesting thing is, most of the people in attendance were women.
Yeah.
And there were very few men there. And you need together. You need both in order to get the legislation passed that you need, and the understanding that you need, that we're all in this together, and that together is what makes it a happy society.
Yeah, I agree. I really love that example of the Hopi tribe, and understanding that it's this coexistence, it's this shared responsibility that really pushes happy, successful existence with one another. Our communities are able to thrive more when we both understand that we have importance and value in one another. If we can just respect that we each have something to contribute, and it is not defined by whatever societal norms there are, but a collective understanding of what individual skills and values you bring to the table. So that is really, it makes me feel really good and hopeful. Absolutely. I had another question for you, because we're speaking about all these different historical figures, and I'm wondering if there's anybody or even an event in history that was just very profound to you that you wouldn't mind speaking on. So whether it be a person or event that just really impacted your maybe it's your leadership style, or just your view on society and what work you do.
All right, so I have two answers for that. So as far as people, I am a science fiction reader.
Nice.
And science fiction, the reason I love it is because they look at the possibilities of what society could be, and then they write stories in fiction about different kinds of societies, different roles for people. And so the author Octavia Butler, I don't know if you know her, she's a black woman author, And first I have to say, many women authors for years never put their name down as a woman, so it was clear that it was a woman author, not just in science fiction, across the board. That's the same for research, other things where the woman would just put her initials or something because she was less likely to be published having a woman's name. So Octavia Butler writes fantastic stories about women and women in society and envisioning different worlds and how it could be. And my other favorite author, a woman author, who is Sherry Tepper, and she also does the same. Her stories are different, of course, from Octavia Butler's, but they again give you a chance to just think about, what it could be, what I would like to have, what roles would need changing, etc. And so I really like that. And as far as my leadership style or whatever, as a youth, I belonged to a youth organization, and the youth organization really allowed you to take any role you wanted to do. If there was a need in the organization for somebody to fill this position or that position, you could do it. You could say, yes, I can do that, or I think I can do that even, whatever. And so that organization was a very open one, a very equality focused one, economic, gender, that was, they were all that always. And so I took a lot of leadership roles as I was growing up. First I was, at 12, my sister wanted to have a group in that organization, and there was nobody to be the group leader. She was 10. I said, I can do that. Okay. I'm always amazed that the parents said, hey, yeah, we're going to let our kids have a 12-year-old. But they did. We had sleepovers. We had education. So from I was a camp counselor. I've done all kinds of things as a volunteer and all of that. So it's not one event, but that you watch your teachers, you watch your counselors, you watch other people, and you say, I like the way they did this, I like the way they did that, I do not want to do what they did, and you develop your leadership style. So
that makes sense.
I don't think it could be one thing.
No, that makes absolute sense. And I really appreciate that even in your youth, like there were people that empowered you to take that leadership position, and I see you also in spaces where you have the opportunity to do that with others. Just knowing that on the DEIC we have youth commissioners, and we're able to empower them in that space to also be leaders and grow and to have the impact that you're able to have here in GV. So as we reflect on women's history, I really wanted to ask you what changes you've seen in your lifetime regarding women's history.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Obviously, since I have a great-grandchild, I have seen some history here in the United States, here in Minnesota. I was born in Minnesota. So when I was a kid, going to school, girls were only allowed to come to school in a skirt. You couldn't wear pants. We did not have busing. We had to walk to school, and it was not that close, in a skirt. In the school building itself, in our classrooms, there was a cloakroom for boys and a cloakroom for girls. At the playground, there was a playground for boys and a playground for girls. All of these on the assumption that maybe boys were too rough, girls couldn't play with the boys, who knows. When in junior high, we learned how to play basketball. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but girls had to play 9-court basketball and not a whole court. Because, of course, girls couldn't run across a whole court. You had to have it divided up into littler courts, right?
Okay.
When I got married, at that time, only the man, the husband, could sign the lease. The woman couldn't. If you weren't married, a woman could sign a lease for an apartment. But once you were married, the husband had to sign it.
Wow.
A woman could not apply for a credit card. A man had to apply. The husband had, and he could give me rights, the woman rights to use the credit card, but the woman could not sign up for a credit card. And I actually Well, I know somebody who never then put her credit card in her name, and her husband died.
Yeah.
And even though they have money, they have property, she could not get a credit card in her own name because she never established her credit score by having a card in her own name.
Wow.
And so that's just an aside of what women have to know, that they have to have their own bank account, they have to have their own credit card. This is a part of, changing laws in history, but you have to establish those things so that you have, to be enabled to work in the society and live in the society, you have to have your own credit score. So that's not women's history, but it is women's history because it affects history, and it affects
Absolutely.
women over time.
Mm-hmm.
So things have changed a lot over time when, and of course social mores have changed a lot. So when I was young, you never had men and women living together who were morally of good repute. It was a terrible, terrible thing. You had to be married in order to live together, and now it's just taken for granted that people can, live together if they want. So society has changed a lot since I was a kid.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it. I mean, if I'm being honest with you, it sounds like if you were married, if a man was married to a woman, it seems as though the man owned the woman.
Well, that was the history of, right.
Getting permission to sign
A
for
lease.
a lease is a bizarre concept for me to understand. But
That's right.
I mean, even the credit card thing is just bizarre, and
Yeah, so I'll tell you
think
one
about it.
more. So I went to the University of Pennsylvania, and I was pregnant while I was taking classes, and I just had to go to the library, and I was wearing slacks, pants, to the library, and they would not let me in because I was not wearing a skirt.
wow.
That's right.
In a place of higher education too, that's really shocking. Sometimes you think that, in those places, people are a lot more progressive thinking.
You would think. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in some ways, women have been fighting for rights, and these are very tiny little things,
Right.
but they make a difference.
They do. Very
they
nuanced.
make a big difference in your life, and so there's all kinds of battles that you have to be fighting on all kinds of different levels to get the rights that you want.
Right.
And it's not just wages; it's personal, actions and what you can do and what you can wear and what's accepted.
So you kind of spoke to this before, but I really wanted to make it very clear for our viewers. From your perspective, what are issues that women still face today, and how can society address them?
Okay.
So we spoke about the individual, but if we could speak more about the collective, maybe.
Okay, I'm going to go to my notes.
That is
so I
okay
don't
with me.
Forget anything. So I think that one of the biggest issues for society is that we don't think of women's work, raising the kids, etc., cleaning the house, shopping, as having any kind of dollar value. It's just what's supposed to be done. And so when we talk about the economy and GDP, etc., those kinds of things that a woman has to do that obviously contributes to society as much as somebody who's gone to a job and gets paid for the job has no dollar value. And I think that really until the society thinks of it as also, I mean, this is a sad comment on society, but in the world we live in, unless society says, yes, it does in fact have a dollar value when we look at what women are contributing to society, you can't really win the battle of what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, we always have to make a business case for something, and in this instance, I completely hear you. You can't put a number on the value that a woman's bringing to keeping the family and home afloat.
Right.
That's, yes, thank you.
Yeah, so that's, whatever. So then the next thing I wanted to say is that women have to value themselves. And women have been known that they're not going to go and say to their boss, I want a raise. So-and-so, a man is getting this for the same job, and I do as equal value in work, and I want a raise. And women have difficulty going and asking for that, or asking for a promotion, et cetera. And so women have to learn how to value themselves, have to expect that they're going to be treated equally with men. And they aren't. They don't expect it. Many women don't expect it. The younger women now are beginning to, I think. My granddaughters do, I think.
Yeah.
But this is a societal issue that I think is important. And then how we treat abuse, how we treat harassment in the workplace. And as we said, people need money for education. But as far as what we can be doing, what kind of activities do we have to go out and do? Well, I think that, as you said, voting is maybe the most important thing, because you put people in office that are going to do what you think needs to be done to have a better society. So voting, you have to go to protests. Yeah. Which is difficult because they're held usually or often when you're at work, so you can't do it. Unless on the weekend. But protest, letters to your legislature. You have to be out there and attend activities that promote different things. But I wanted to also say that women do all kinds of things, and this is a part of women's history. So churches have clothing drives. Yeah. Churches and other organizations do food, soup kitchens. They do all kinds of volunteer activities that create a much better society, help a lot of people. And again, this is something that's not recognized as value, but these are all things that are really necessary in society, and they have to be given more recognition and more value to it, that all volunteer activities that men and women do, that those are crucial for really the running, of society. Yeah. In a good way. So you have, how you recognize what people do, and this is all a part, I think, of history. Because history is what you're doing with your society to hopefully make it a better society.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's a great answer. It really brought up another question for me. And you spoke about women learning. Where are places where women can go to learn and be empowered, and hopefully conquer that fear of being able to, you had spoke about asking for a raise or reporting harassment. Where are places where women can be in what's the word I'm looking for? Be amongst one another and feel empowered or learn.
Yeah. So, I think that's why I say that women who attain leadership positions or are faculty at a university or teachers that are in school, all of them have to let girls know that they can do it, that they can have self-confidence. Yeah. And so I think it really has to begin at an early age, but it has to be promoted. Teachers have to mentor and say, I see that you have this special talent. Here you can do this, you can do that. School advisors can say, you're interested in biology. These schools are the wonderful schools for biology. Help kids to get into it. There has to be scholarships that you have, but education is a big part of it, and girls have to believe that they can do math. They have to believe that science is interesting. They have to not say, that's not something that I as a female would do. So I it's mentorship, it's help, it's recognition, and even when a little kid's a toddler, right, and people I know do this, but the books you read, the toys you give, the games you play, all of those create an image in a child's mind of what they can do.
Yeah.
And you need, I think, you need to challenge your kids. Say, oh, here, let's try to do this, and then you praise them when they succeed. And you have to be doing it from an early age.
Right.
To have people feel, when they become adults, that they can do things.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really big on the mentorship aspect, creating space for youth to feel empowered to explore, to challenge. I think that it's really important that we allow them the space to challenge what we felt was the norm, what we felt was right, because it seems like every generation we're coming up against a rebelliousness in our youth that are saying, hey, why do y'all do that? And then we have to answer those questions.
That's right.
We have to answer like, well, that's just the way it was done, or maybe there is a valid reason for why we did it, but it's really important that they feel strongly enough and comfortable enough to question those things, and we give them the space to do it and not make them subservient to whatever thoughts we had.
And not I told you to do it this way and you better do it
Absolutely,
that way.
exactly. And tying it back to women's history, I think that is equally said in our young women, our young girls, and in those spaces where, like I was speaking to, where you were saying like the women leadership coming back and lifting the younger ones up, creating that space intentionally. Like it can definitely be a passing by, like, acknowledgement, but taking the time to be like, hey, we have something really special here with these young ladies. Let's provide intentional space for them to excel. So that's where it really stuck with me. I really appreciated that.
I'm going to make a plug for camps as well.
Oh yeah.
Summer camps and winter activities can play a huge role in kids' perception of themselves socially, and this is not just girls, but this in general. And there are a lot of specialty camps, and for music, for all kinds of things, and where people that have special talents or special interests can go. And they're away from home, they're in when you're in a new environment where you're not with your parents, et cetera, you can feel free to do things that you wouldn't otherwise do. It's a more opening, and you get to know yourself better. And so to give kids an experience where they really get to know how they can work it within other,
Yeah. That makes that, you know what? I was a camp counselor once, and I took for granted that whole process back when I was doing it. And then towards the end of it, you start to see, oh, these kids are really growing and they have developed more skills and teamwork development, and it was a really cool experience. But when I first did it, I must admit, I was a young kid. I was like, I'm getting paid. I'm just getting a job. It was great.
It's a big responsibility to be a camp counselor.
It is. It absolutely is. People are trusting you with a lot.
That's right, exactly.
So we're kind of getting into some intersectionality, right? Like we're talking about youth, women, and I really was curious on how, in your leadership roles, how you can tie back all of these intersections, how DEI in general impacts your leadership, whether it be with women, with youth, in your work with the Golden Valley Affordable Housing. How do you make sure that you're grounded in DEI?
I think you have to talk to people. So for one of the things that our affordable housing group does is we work with Homeline, the organization Homeline, and they keep track every week of who is being evicted. And some city housing teams have volunteered to work with Homeline. And so every week, Homeline, if somebody in Golden Valley is being evicted, they give us the names of those people. And we go to visit them with information. And it gives you the opportunity to meet people who are going through eviction and seeing what's happening. So for example, we went to one person And it was a young guy, and his sister was there cleaning up the apartment. He had decided to move, right away. And he was behind in paying his rent. What happened? He had rented a van for a trip. There was a hailstorm. The van was damaged. Because it's weather, the company's insurance and his car insurance didn't cover it. In order for him to pay to repair the van, which can cost thousands of dollars, he got behind in his rent and he was being evicted. So you learn stories like that as you go out and meet people, and have interactions with other people that keep you grounded, because you say, this person wasn't derelict, he was doing everything he was supposed to do, and look at what happened.
Right.
And, and I read the newspaper, I read articles, I donate to different organizations that give information on what they're doing, and I think all of that gives me ground, but it also gives me ideas of what other people are doing, what issues other people are dealing with, how they're dealing with. The organization has professionals that give ideas on what words you should say, how you should proceed.
Yeah.
All of that, helps a lot in having leadership positions.
This has been a real pleasure. Honestly, Golden Valley is honored, absolutely blessed to have you there, Ruth.
Thank you.
And all the many hats that Ruth Paradise here wears, we are especially honored to have you on the DEIC, keeping that thing moving. All right, all right. So I just want to thank you again, and everyone. This has been Let's Talk About It GV. Thank you.